From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, I am Estefanía Bravo. This is From the South. A cross-party committee has been created by the members of the National Assembly in Ecuador to investigate its president, Elizabeth Cabezas. The committee was approved with 123 votes in favor and 1 abstention. Now 3 assembly members will have to investigate the president of the assembly, accused of blocking a probe against President Lenín Moreno. An audio was leaked in March where Cabezas was heard talking to Interior Minister Maria Paula Romo, allegedly about the votes needed to prevent the investigation.
This concerns the President of the National Assembly. We have to defend the institution.
We do not have to be confused about this. This is not a criminal case. Recently, we received an important recommendation from the Observatory of the Legislative Power, and the reform of the legislative function is clear. These determination processes do not require to verify the legality of the evidence because we are not handling a judicial case here.
And still in Ecuador, workers at a plantation company are demanding that the authorities help them reach a settlement in their dispute with the company. The Furukawa Plantation Company, which exports abaca fiber, used to make specialized paper, was closed in February. It was accused of labor abuses that amounted to modern slavery. Denise Herrera reports.
Jose has been working at the Furukawa Plantation Company since 1999. He lives in a single room with his family on one of the company's plantations. He says, but the workers' conditions have caused serious injuries among the employees, and he complains that the company has never fulfilled its obligations.
Everyone wants to leave. I want to leave too. Recently, I heard that Furukawa is going to fix the camps and they will give us $500 a month. No one will accept that. We are already in terrible conditions.
Walter is one of those helping the Furukawa employees. He says they just want the workers' right to be respected.
The company is now closed. It would very bad if it opens again in 2 months, and the workers have to go back to the same thing. And at this point, the state should have a plan for the workers.
Various organizations in defense of human and workers' rights are also supporting the employees.
If the state does nothing to punish the company, if it doesn't insist that the company pays them what they are legally entitled to and pays for the abuses it has committed, then the state will be an accomplice to the systematic violation of human rights at Furukawa Company.
The owner of Furukawa argues that the company has turned Ecuador in the world's second biggest exporter of abaca fiber, and that it has met all its commercial, tax and labor obligations. However, the workers are warning of new violations of their rights.
We know that Furukawa is planning to destroy the workers' camps and leave them on the streets. These people already live in miserable conditions and they have nowhere to go apart from these camps.
Our rights must be respected. There are children and teenagers who have been raped in the camp. My daughter was raped, and they don't understand. I will not allow this as long as I live.
The workers say they want talks at the highest level to find a peaceful solution. They also accuse the government of protecting the company's interests, while it abuses its workers' rights. Denise Herrera, Telesur, Ecuador.
The Venezuelan Foreign Minister Jorge Arreaza is in Syria for a 2-day visit. He started his trip at the Unknown Soldier Monument, where he left a wreath in homage to Syrian soldiers who gave their lives in defense of the nation. The Venezuelan official was received by the Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. Arreaza also participated in a meeting of solidarity with Venezuela. The foreign minister thanked the support of Syria in facing United States aggressions. He also thanked social movements, students, and political parties for their expressions of support for the people of Venezuela. And after his meeting with Bashar al-Assad, Arreaza met with his counterpart Walid al-Moallem to address the increasing cooperation between their nations. They also shared their vision on the magnitude of the U.S. aggressions against their peoples. Meanwhile, in Venezuela, the 30-day plan for the recovery of electricity is being implemented. On Wednesday night, President Nicolás Maduro condemned attempts to impose chaos in the country through an attack on public services in the country.
Venezuela is experiencing the first non-conventional war that aims at undermining public services in order to change a government. Orchestrated by the United States. It's the first war of an electric, cybernetic, electromagnetic and physical nature that seeks to overthrow a democratically elected and legitimate government and impose chaos.
Our correspondent Luis Tavera has more from Caracas.
The president referred to the plans of the international right against Venezuela. He said he has more details that he will reveal soon, but that these plans include criminal acts against the entire Venezuelan population. He pointed out that this is the first electronic war against a constitutional government to try to overthrow it. But he said that the government's contingency plans have managed to preserve stability in the country, which of course has been evident in our own reports in recent days. The electricity supply is returning to normal as the government's 30-day plan helps to provide stability. At the same time, the Venezuelan foreign minister is continuing his international tour to condemn the attacks on Venezuela, while the Constituent Assembly has taken measures against those who are backing the attempts to destabilize the country.
That was Luis Tavera from Caracas. A new case has opened against Brazil's former president, Michel Temer, for alleged money laundering. A federal judge in Sao Paulo accepted the case after a request was filed by the prosecutor's office. With this, Temer would be facing 4 lawsuits and investigation for 6 other cases. And former Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva left office in 2011 with an approval rating of 87%, the highest in the nation's history. From his first day in office, he fought against inequality across all social levels. Let's find out more in the second part of our series, looking at the life and work of the Latin American leader.
Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, the most popular president Brazil has ever had, will have been in prison for 1 year on April the 7th. The goal of his arrest was to damage his reputation and put a stop to his return to politics. Lula was in power for 10 years in the largest country in Latin America and was beloved by most. He won the 2002 elections after 22 years of fighting and building the Workers' Party. He will tell us we cannot err. What did he mean by that? A rule must focus on the poor and the working class. We have to break the state tradition of serving the rich. From 2003 to 2011, Lula's government stabilized the economy, lowered the unemployment rate, as well as the public debt, and brought Brazil onto the international stage. During his term in office, nearly 30 million people were pulled out of poverty, and a similar number got access to electricity.
He did not back down from anyone. No institution, no provocation. Lula battled against hunger and confronted ignorance, and he did so to overcome these issues. He fought to give us a Brazil that we have never had. He thought about doing good and offering opportunities for everyone. He thought of the people who had the least and the most vulnerable, who needed the state to help them out of misery.
The caravans that supported him were like a lifeline. That support gave him energy during the worst times. He loved to be in direct contact with people. According to his friends, Lula found strength in becoming the hope that would trump fear.
Lula is someone who, on 2 occasions, traveled throughout the whole of Brazil, from north to south, through thousands and thousands of kilometers. He wanted to meet people, to learn from them, to see what challenges they faced. In 2017, Lula once again carried out these caravans. Now, at a time when he cannot join us, we decided to retake the caravans. Before he was in prison, Lula used to say, "If something happens to me, you will be my legs. If something happens to me, I will talk to the Brazilian people through your voice."
His comrades don't see Lula as a conventional leader. He's a symbol of the workers' struggle, recalling the words of his mother, who used to tell him to always keep his head up. He has such dignity that it scare away opponents and which continues to guide the work of activists.
The polls have just closed in Jamaica's Portland East Constituency, and the ballots are being counted in the hotly contested by-election. The seat was left vacant following the murder of MP Dr. Linvale Bloomfield in February. Opposition candidate Damian Crawford was up against the ruling party's Anne Marie Vaz. It's also one of the most consequential by-elections in the country's recent political history. That's because when the final ballot is counted, the country will know whether the opposition would prevent the ruling party from increasing its narrow House majority. Just over 36,000 electors are eligible to vote. Jamaica's former Prime Minister Bruce Golding will lead a Commonwealth group to observe the parliamentary elections in the Maldives. Despite the Maldives' withdrawal from the Commonwealth in 2016, the country has expressed interest in rejoining. As part of this process, President Ibrahim Mohamed Solih requested observers from the Commonwealth. The polls are scheduled for this Sunday. The president has accused the opposition of trying to delay the election, but there is no official word on any postponement. We'll be back very soon. Stay with us. Welcome back. President Donald Trump has said he would impose tariffs on Mexico if its authorities don't control the border with the U.S. This comes just a week after President Trump threatened to close the southern border.
If the drugs don't stop, Mexico can stop them if they want. We're going to tariff the cars. The cars are very big. And if that doesn't work, we're going to close the border. But I think that'll work. That's massive numbers of dollars. So if we don't see people apprehended and brought back to their countries, if we see these massive caravans coming up to our country right through Mexico, coming right through Mexico like nothing.
In response, the top Mexican trade official said that the trade agreement between Mexico, the U.S., and Canada is firm regarding the car industry and not under threat. The Mexican ambassador to the U.S. also addressed the issue.
We are responding on the migration side in a respectful way at the highest level, and then the USMCA, the trade negotiations are a separate track, a separate window, and we are dealing with that also in a respectful and positive way.
I think it's very clear by the various stakeholders in the bilateral relationship that closing the border doesn't help anyone, and that it would cause serious harm not just to both countries' economies, greatly affecting U.S. border districts and Mexican border cities and states. But it would also damage the trust between both countries and the collaboration we currently have between both countries.
A massive demonstration is taking place in Argentina to demand that the authorities put an end to austerity measures that are affecting the working class. Our correspondent Edgardo Esteban is at the protest with the latest details.
Despite the rain, workers' unions and social movements are gathering in Buenos Aires to protest against the economic policies promoted by the government of Mauricio Macri and the austerity measures they have strengthened since the agreement signed with the International Monetary Fund. Demonstrators are marching towards Congress to demand lawmakers concrete actions to stop massive layoffs, to boost national production, and to stop the increase in the price of basic services that are affecting the working class. Unions of movement leaders have said that if the government does not announce concrete actions in response to these demands, they will call for a general strike in the upcoming days. This could become the 5th national strike during the government of Mauricio Macri.
The UN General Assembly President Maria Fernanda Espinosa has visited Cuba to boost ties with the government and discuss topics like gender equality. Espinosa has so far met with Cuba's Foreign Minister Bruno Rodriguez. She is also set to meet with President Miguel Díaz-Canel. The UN top official also plans to address multilateralism issues while on the island.
It's always a pleasure to know that Cuba is an indispensable and strategic ally in the strengthening of the multilateral system, which we know can be complicated at times, that bring with it challenges for building global peace and a multilateral world order that is fairer, more equitable, and more democratic.
An estimated $18 million worth of cocaine was found attached to a vessel at a jetty in Trinidad. The tanker, registered in Spain, was docked at the Atlantic liquefied natural gas port in Point Fordon. Police had initially responded to a report of a suspicious item attached to the ship's rudder. Coast Guard divers then retrieved 7 large packages of cocaine. It's not the first time this vessel has been found with illegal drugs.
They managed to seize quite a lot of narcotics, which appear to be cocaine, from the testing last night. Unfortunately, this vessel in 2015, this particular vessel that came from Spain here to fill up with LNG to return to Spain, this particular vessel had an incident in Peru, a similar incident in Peru in 2015.
Undercover police could soon be operating in schools across Trinidad and Tobago. The plan was announced by Police Commissioner Gary Griffith to help tackle increasing student violence. The commissioner also announced plans to set up a domestic violence unit. High-tech equipment would enable officers to actually see the location from where a distress call was being made. People would be able to file reports of domestic violence through an online system. Peruvian authorities have launched an investigation into the death of a British pastor and activist whose burnt body was found this Tuesday in the Amazonian city of Iquitos. 71-year-old Paul Macaulay was campaigning against the incursion of oil and mining companies into Amazonian communities. His body was found in a hostel he set up for indigenous students. He founded an environmental network in 2004 to defend indigenous rights.
And I'd say they all need to think about the other species in danger, which are the human species. The indigenous people and the riverside people are no longer able to live sustainably in their areas because they've been robbed of their natural resources. And continually they're coming to the cities as refugees.
Brazilian authorities have stopped an attempted robbery at ATMs in the state of Sao Paulo. 10 assailants were killed during a shootout with the police. But in total, about 25 suspects were involved in the attempts to blow up the machines. It's not yet known if any suspect is in custody. Police says the group was armed with high-caliber rifles and arrived in 5 armored cars. A road has collapsed in Bolivia's capital, La Paz, due to heavy rains. Some residential homes in the suburb of Pasanqueri have been literally left on a cliff edge. More than 30 people have died and over 47,000 families affected by this year's rainy season in the country.
We are always going to be worried about our city, given its geography. This is always going to occur in our city, in areas where the geography is weak. These things happen, and with the wet season.
We'll take a short break now. Join us again after this. Welcome back. Land conflicts are one of the main reasons for the great insecurity endured by people living in North Kivu in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Ancient plantations were stolen by Belgian colonizers and then turned into giant farms owned by the elite. Now local farmers are at the mercy of armed groups set up to protect these stolen lands. Our special correspondent in Masisi, Oscar Epeldi, has the story.
Shonga is a village in the Masisi Chefere Muhunde, and it's surrounded by land that's been privately owned since the colonial era. One of the landowners has tried to evict the whole village. He sent the army after the villagers, who had to flee, but they managed to organize to seek justice, and in the end, they recovered their land.
They wanted to deceive us by saying our lands were part of their plantation, and they initially won. They paid off officials and evicted us. They burned down houses, raped women, and robbed us. This is all part of our submission to the appeals court, and we wanted to move over to a criminal court.
The villagers won the third and fourth trial after showing that Shonga is their ancestral land and never belonged to any plantation.
Justice has to remain neutral, and it should help those living on the fringes. When we see increased military presence, we are seeing the result of corruption. The falsified document the landowners showed came from the time of the RCD rebel movement. The people who founded the revolution have taken over almost all the old plantations of the Masisi territory.
When our elders died, they left those lands to us. The Muami Kalinda Mutizo recognizes those lands as ours.
The village chief was arrested by the National Intelligence Agency on charges of rebellion after he organized the people to fight for their rights.
We have received no help from the state, but we still have many needs. We need help with building infrastructure, most of all. Second, we need access to healthcare, to medicines, and to a medical center. And third, we need roads.
They don't even have a road suitable for motorcycles, and the local school has been mostly abandoned as the village needed all its money to pay lawyers.
Students haven't been able to pay the required fee of $10.
This case has cost us around $20,000.
This conflict is still in the courts, but the villagers are committed to defending their land and their rights. The owners of the next-door farm are supposedly Rwandan, but they hide behind a Congolese middleman who's been keeping the lawsuit alive in the courts.
People in Rwanda are set to commemorate the deadly genocide in the country 25 years after it took place. Annual commemorations are held in Rwanda from April 7th to the 13th. Afterwards, an honorary 3 months of remembrance takes place. This period is in observance of the 3 months which the genocide spanned. Survivors use the annual commemoration as a healing process. The genocide, which took place in 1994, resulted in more than 800,000 deaths. A showdown is looming in Libya between forces loyal to Prime Minister Fayez al-Sarraj and those belonging to General Khalifa Haftar, head of the so-called Libyan National Army. On Wednesday, Haftar ordered his forces to move on Tripoli and overthrow the Sarraj-led government. Libya has been in turmoil since the NATO-backed overthrow of former leader Muammar Gaddafi in 2011. It is divided between the Western-backed government based in Tripoli and the Benghazi-based allied to Haftar.
Heroes, the time has come. It is time to advance towards Tripoli and to enter it peacefully, as we have always done with a firm step.
Meanwhile, the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has expressed his concern at the treatment on migrants in detention centers. Speaking after visiting a detention center in Tripoli, Guterres said the conditions under which the migrants are living are shocking. Migrants frequently face abuse, including torture and rape. The majority of them are intercepted by the Libyan Coast Guard while trying to cross the Mediterranean Sea. The U.S. House of Representatives has approved a bill to end U.S. support for the Saudi-led war in Yemen, but President Trump is likely to veto it. This comes a month after the Senate approved the bill and is seen as a rebuke of the president's continuous support for Saudi Arabia. Since 2015, the U.S. has provided refueling of jets and intelligence information to Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates in their campaign against the Yemen Houthi rebels. This Thursday, the world commemorates the 51st anniversary of Martin Luther King's death. Martin Luther King was awarded with the Nobel Peace Prize in 1964 for his nonviolent campaign against racism. He also fought to secure economic justice. King was assassinated on April 4th, 1968, but his fight for freedom, justice, and human rights are just as topical today as they were back then.
I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place.
And with that story, we've come to the end of this news brief. These and other stories, as always, find them on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also join us on social media. We are on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Estefania Bravo. Thank you for watching.